Ladies and gentlemen, I thought so. I thought it's still a good morning in the beautiful weather of Johannesburg. Welcome to the Joburg FMDV conference, one of its own, first time happening here in South Africa. And I think the theme is appropriate. It's about creating funding opportunities for world-class African possibilities. We are told that in 2050, 2/3 of most populations will be found in cities. So cities are really dealing with complex issues around waste management, transport, energy, water, and they're always seeking ways on how to finance these things, especially here in Johannesburg, because we know what the statistics have told us recently, that there's a lot of inward migration. So there's quite a demand on the current infrastructure and current infrastructure of several cities, that alternative funding methods are needed in order to meet these demands. The time is coming, and it's approaching very swiftly, that we must address the housing, we must address the energy, the water, because the World Economic Forum talks about one of the basic and human need that is coming, and it's the availability of Wi-Fi. So if you look at the Maslow hierarchy of needs, once we have addressed everything, our needs in the cities, because of the high demand of connectivity, will be that we need a longer battery life, we need Wi-Fi spots, and we definitely need uninterrupted phone calls. Because in the cities we need to connect, and when we connect, that's when we make the city to be a livable city. There's a concept called livability, that parks must be green, must be pristine, that traffic lights must work, that libraries must be stocked, and that the citizens of the city must always connect, because it's in connection that's where ideas are booming. So I'm excited when I look at the program, given what is going to take place today and a number of funding alternatives that we are going to explore. And with that, allow me, with all protocol observed, to welcome the number one in Johannesburg, our executive mayor, and Date Pax, to welcome us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I didn't realize program directors are also primed to make demands as they facilitate the program. I was asking the team as we were preparing to say, why have I been asked to prepare and present a formal speech in a workshop? Because I thought that the idea is for us to meet, to be in a workshop, to share ideas, to share experiences, to debate. And I'm kind of thrust into this opening ceremony part of the workshop, and I have to do the formal part of it. So let me start by dispensing with the formal part before I freestyle. The Honorable MEC for Finance in Gauteng, Ms. Barbara Creasy, thank you very much for joining us and gracing this occasion with your presence. I've also been joined by the Deputy President of South African Local Government Association, the Mayor of the West Rand, Councillor Mponawa, to our host and Vice President of the FMDV, Councillor Jeff Makubo, representatives of FMDV and all organizations present here today, both local and international funding agencies, fellow councillors and mayors, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the City of Johannesburg, I'd like to welcome you all to this local government infrastructure financing workshop hosted by the City of Johannesburg in collaboration with the Global Fund for City Development. The theme of this workshop is creating funding opportunities for world-class African possibilities. Ladies and gentlemen, infrastructure funding is high on our priority list, and the onus is on us as political leaders, municipal officials, banking institutions, regulatory bodies, and those in the business world and other stakeholders present here today, all of whom have an interest in our cities and the success of our cities. And to ensure this, we meet at this workshop to discuss financing and funding solutions for cities internationally, but also looking with a particular bias to African cities. In this regard, we are meeting to share experiences, to share our own knowledge and experiences amongst peers, both local and internationally, in terms of the work that we've done to be able to finance our infrastructure needs, to meet our economic development goals and objectives, to continue providing reliable services to those who have services, and for us in the developing world to extend services to those who are unserved or underserviced by municipal services. This in an environment where there's limited financial resources and the funding environment is not uniform for local government, certainly on the African continent, but also internationally. Our revenue streams are not uniform, nor is our capacity to generate the revenue and collect such revenue. Our ability to raise funding is not uniform, nor is the legislative framework that governs our capacity to raise financing uniform. Yet the needs, in many ways, are similar. Our people need access to water, sanitation, electricity, roads, transport, housing, libraries, community parks, and other amenities. Some of us are responsible for the provision of schooling. Some of us are responsible for the provision of clinics. Some of us are even responsible for bulk infrastructure generation, transmission, and distribution. And in there lies the need for us to share our experiences with the acute awareness that our environments are not necessarily the same, yet the experiences of our people can be shared. Allow me in this regard to share a journey that we've undertaken as the City of Johannesburg since we've pioneered the issuance of the first municipal bond in the South African market post-apartheid in 2004. As the City of Johannesburg, we thought that it would be appropriate to initiate the establishment of the muni bond market as a mechanism to fund our infrastructure needs, but also as a means of extending opportunities to those who would want to invest in municipal capital. through the issuance of our first bond, we're able to break through and enable the market to accommodate an instrument that historically had not been provided for in the South African debt capital markets. This was immediately followed by a second bond that we issued in 2005, where we thought that because we need to increase the tenor, but also reduce the cost and increase the volume that we would want to raise, we needed to explore an underwriting mechanism that was undertaken jointly by the IFC and the Development Bank of South Africa when we issued COJ02, which is the City of Johannesburg second bond that we issued. It is safe to say that we successfully issued COJ02 and in fact would be redeeming COJ02 over the next few months, which has a multiple redemption structure. So the next redemption cycle would be, in fact, this year, when we begin the redemption of the COJ02. But this enabled us to create appetite in the South African market for long-term financing of municipal bonds and created the ambition by local government to be able to issue longer-term instruments and explore more creative instruments that could be implemented. Subsequent to that, we issued, amongst others, a retail bond and explored the possibilities in the retail bond market, something I believe we still need to get back to. We have successfully redeemed the retail bonds issued, yet the levels of subscription, particularly by individuals, were not at the levels that we had initially hoped for. I suppose because the South African market itself, particularly people, private individuals seeking to invest their instruments, did not look at local governments as an area of investing. And therefore, the appetite for the retail bond was fairly limited, and in many ways, not too many people participated and were attracted. More institutional investors of a smaller nature into the retail bond structure. And more recently, the City of Johannesburg issued what is now COJG01, the green bond, which is the first green bond that was issued and listed on the stock exchange. This was designed jointly and with the assistance of the stock exchange to create an instrument that would enable us to finance sustainable and green infrastructure, but also create appetite for those who seek to invest in instruments that are sustainable and green. I'm sharing these experiences because I believe that it is through continuously finding partners and continuously trying to innovate and find solutions that we would be able to expand our opportunities to finance infrastructure and look for new investors to get into the markets that we continue to create. As the City of Johannesburg, we are currently cooperating with our provincial government and our sister municipalities in Gauteng in an initiative that seeks to pool financing of municipal infrastructure. This to take advantage, of course, of the benefits that we would be able to collectively pool into a common issuance. Certainly, this has not gotten to the point of maturity that one can say we would be in the market very soon. Certainly, there are regulatory hurdles that we would have to overcome. Certainly, it would be the first time in South Africa that a province sits together with its municipalities and says, how do we pull together to finance infrastructure and our collective needs for infrastructure? It would also be a first for some of the municipalities that are smaller to participate in the debt capital markets. So it would be something new, it would be something innovative, yet it is uncharted territory. We would have to determine what the appetite of the individual municipalities is, how much of your balance sheet you bring to bear, what the implications are for those of us who are active in the debt capital markets, what the capacity to repay is, what infrastructure we would finance that's mutually beneficial, and how this would be structured. But I don't think that we should reach a point where we do not continue exploring innovation and solutions to financing our capital infrastructure needs. I believe that we have a collective responsibility to work both vertically and horizontally to find solutions to funding municipal infrastructure. Cognizant that those larger municipalities in Gauteng, that is the city of Johannesburg, city of Tshwane, and the city of Ekurhuleni, in this pooling structure would have a greater responsibility to their sister cities in the greater Gauteng area, who might not have the balance sheet to be able to carry a structure that would increase the capital investment programs that they would want to pursue. I'm saying this, MEC, with a particular degree of caution, cognizant of the reality that there are regulatory constraints to implementing such a program. Yet cognizant that we're a unitary country where we can't say to the people of Miraflores, well, actually, you see, my friend, the mayor of the West Rand is here, so I must say, to the people of Miraflores, you can't get infrastructure. You can't get a bus rapid transit system because your municipality does not raise bonds or does not participate in debt capital markets. It should be possible that we take advantage of the reality that we are a cosmopolitan region, that we are a globally competitive city region, that we're a polycentric center of South Africa in Gauteng, and that we're able to leverage off each other so that we're able to extend services to all the people of our province. I would like to thank all of you for making time to be part of this event. I would also like to thank the FMDV and other international organizations, namely the International Finance Corporation, the World Bank, the French Development Agency, UN Habitat, USAID, EIB, KfW, local institutions such as SALGA, the South African Cities Network, National Treasury, ratings agencies, asset management companies, banks, and local municipalities for the efforts and support to participate in this workshop and for enabling us to share our experiences, and for enabling us to learn from our peers both locally and internationally. As we say in the local government sector throughout the world, give me a brand new good idea and I will take it. Don't worry, we're not here to actually simply share ideas, but we're also here to take ideas. And that is what makes local government such a unique area in which to work, because we continue to learn from each other and we continue to share our experiences, and any new idea that would help us provide services to our people and improve the way in which we work, we will gladly take. So we're looking forward over the next 3 days to some new ideas that would be able to live here in Johannesburg and implement here in Johannesburg. Lastly, I would like to thank our MEC, Barbara Chrissy, for making time for this workshop to discuss pooled financing and the establishment of an agency that would be able to look at vertical and horizontal integration in our province. I think that this gives us the opportunity to also tap into the knowledge and experience of those around the table to enable us to see whether our ideas can reach fruition. Thank you very much. You see, the problem, MEC, with reading speeches and freestyling at the same time is it says here, immediately after you speak, you must say, I now hand over to the MEC. MEC, please.
Thank you very much, Executive Mayor, Mr. Mpho Parks-Tau. Thank you for your warm words of greeting to all of us, and thank you also for sharing some of your very interesting experiences in the innovative off-balance sheet financing area. Allow me also to acknowledge the Deputy Chair of SALGA, Councillor Mpho Nawa, all the other executive mayors present here this morning, my counterpart in the city of Johannesburg, Councillor Jeffrey Makubo, and other MMCs of finance present here this morning, Mr. Jean-Francois Habot, Executive Director of FMDV, Mr. Lars Anderson, Board of Directors, FMDV, and all other colleagues from SALGA, from national departments, from the finance sectors of various municipalities, ladies and gentlemen. It gives me very great pleasure this morning, Honourable Mayor, on behalf of Premier David Makura, to welcome all of you to the Gauteng Global City Region, the smallest province in our country, but one that has 24% of the population, contributes a third to the gross domestic product, 10% to the gross domestic product of the continent of Africa, and even in these tough economic times, has an economy that is growing above the national average. I think I speak for all of us in the city region when I say that we are excited to be attending this workshop this morning that addresses matters of great importance in these tight fiscal times for governments across our own country and across the continent of Africa. As we all know, ladies and gentlemen, our country's thinking on our development trajectory in general and on infrastructure investment in particular is guided by the National Development Plan, which says, and I quote, "Infrastructure is not just essential for faster economic growth and higher employment. It promotes inclusive growth, providing citizens with the means to improve their own lives and boost their incomes. Infrastructure is essential for development." Now, to achieve this, the National Development Plan notes that the country as a whole will need to promote higher levels of capital spending over the next 15 years, with public sector investment reaching 10% of GDP by 2030. Both the public and the private sectors can play an important role in financing infrastructure development and investment, and the National Development Plan clearly emphasizes that government's willingness to take the lead in promoting infrastructure investment is with the aim of crowding in private sector investment over time. The context within which we are trying to do this, ladies and gentlemen, as we all know, is far from ideal. South Africa is part of an interconnected world, and this makes us vulnerable to world economic trends, and as we know, global performance remains mixed, reflecting an uneven recovery. As a result, the International Monetary Fund has revised global growth for 2014 down by 0.4 percentage points to 3.3%. And I was told, you know, finance people don't normally make jokes, but I was told a little joke the other day that said, how do you know that macroeconomists have a sense of humor? It's that they always talk about growth in 0, percentage point terms. Now, our own domestic growth rate has also been revised downwards to 1.4%, and the reasons for this are well known and well documented. The implications for our broader economic environment place additional constraints on government's approach to public spending in general and on infrastructure investment in particular. On the one hand, slow economic growth requires government to maintain fiscal stimuli to the economy and prioritize service delivery. On the other, rising public debt, reduced fiscal collection, and current account challenges highlight the need to strengthen fiscal consolidation. For those of us tasked with maintaining the public purse, we must constantly strive to maintain a proper balance between these two realities. Finance Minister, the Honourable Nhlanhla Nene, highlighted these complexities during the tabling of his medium-term budget policy speech in November last year, where he emphasized the importance of ensuring that the fiscus remains sustainable and rooted on the principles of both counter-cyclical intervention and long-term debt sustainability. In this environment, redirecting scarce government resources towards infrastructure investment is more urgent than ever before, because such investment contributes to economic growth by lowering transaction costs, creating jobs, concentrating economic activity, improving productive capacity of firms and households, as well as creating other economic linkages. In his State of the Province address in June 2014, Gauteng Premier David Makhura laid out a bold 15-year vision of radical transformation, modernization, and reindustrialization of our city region, which will allow us to meet the goals of the 2030 National Development Plan. By investing in social and economic infrastructure, including quality public transport, re-engineering the province's spatial framework in new human settlements, mainstreaming township economies, and providing quality healthcare and education, we intend to put our global city region on a new trajectory of integrated development and social and economic inclusion. To finance this ambitious program, we have three basic approaches. Firstly, as the Mayor has already alluded to achieve better synergy between provincial and city planning, budgeting, and the implementation, in particular of major infrastructure projects. Secondly, to reorientate existing budgets to core services with an emphasis on infrastructure. And finally, to contain costs and pay attention to eliminating waste and corruption in our own procurement processes. Because the existing fiscal envelope is limited, it therefore places a necessity on us to increase our own revenue on the one hand and to look for alternative financing mechanisms on the other. I've already indicated that one of the ways in which we would want to stretch our rand would be through this better synergy and coordination of planning. And I'm pleased to share with you today that Premier Makhura has established the Provincial Infrastructure Coordinating Committee to give expression to this commitment, and he chairs it, and all of the mayors in the city region participate in it. This forum has already identified a common list of priority infrastructure projects which the province and the cities all agree must be funded over the next 15 years. The Premier will be giving more details of this program in his State of the Province address in February this year, and we see this as being an important step in giving investors certainty in relation to priority areas for infrastructure investment. What I can also tell you today is that over the next 3 years, the province and the cities in this global region will be spending more than 94 billion rand on both social and economic infrastructure projects. Significant as this sum is, it will not be sufficient to meet all of our existing and future needs. I think the Mayor has already spoken about the fact that this province is an area that attracts very high in-migration, with our provincial population growing at 2% per annum. And what this means is that our infrastructure needs far outstrip, both current and future, far outstrip the budgetary capacity available. And that is why the discussion that we are going to be having here over the next 3 days is so very important. I think that for us in the Provincial Treasury, there would be 2 important underlying principles and guidelines that we would want to see in any alternative funding mechanism that we would be adopting. And the first would obviously be that we would always have to be cognizant of our sovereign debt and of our fiscal consolidation program. And secondly, that the way in which we engage in the funding of these infrastructure programs should not place unnecessary burdens on future generations of leaders in our province and in our cities. I'd like to take this opportunity to share with all of you some of the experiences we've already had in seeking alternative funding in the Gauteng provincial government. And we, unlike the cities, are not able to raise bonds to finance our infrastructure needs. And we have therefore had to look at other mechanisms, including public-private partnerships, BOTs, leasing and leaseback options, to name just a few. And we've come to understand that these options are better suited to economic rather than social infrastructure investment. Our key vehicle for sourcing alternative funding for strategic investment from the private sector is the Gauteng Infrastructure Financing Agency. And our colleagues from that agency will be participating together with yourselves from this afternoon until the conclusion of this workshop. GIFA, as we call it, is currently assisting the GCR governments to develop bankable proposals and market them to the private sector. The agency is currently active in energy, the green economy, waste to energy, transport, logistics, ICT, manufacturing and property development. But going forward, we do envisage GIFA becoming a major facilitator of alternative financing for the priority projects. And I think, Mayor, we would see it playing a very important role in the pooled funding that you were talking about in your address. Ladies and gentlemen, by way of conclusion, I would want to urge all of us, in considering ways in which we will raise alternative funding for infrastructure programs, not to forget the many lessons we've all learned in government over the past 20 years. We know that what often goes wrong is not that we can't source the money, but that we're either unable to spend it timelessly, or that the way in which we manage our contracts leads to cost escalation, project scope changes, and lack of planning and weak management. I think that those of you who have seen the front page of the Business Day today will note that once again they are quoting the Governor of the Reserve Bank, who said last week that often when we roll out infrastructure projects, we do have what he calls a significant implementation deficit. It is for this reason that I would want to urge us, Mayor, to not only consider a pooled way of raising alternative funding resources, but also a pooled way in which we are going to develop project management, monitoring and evaluation capacity, so that we can make sure that the funding that we source, both from government and private sector, meets the objectives of our communities and meets those in the most cost-effective way possible. I'd like to end by thanking you for inviting me to make these opening remarks today and to take this opportunity to wish you every success in your deliberations going forward.
A round of applause, please. Thank you, Executive Mayor. Thank you, Honorable MEC. Now that you are all welcomed from SALGA, executive mayors that are here, and the business community, the financing community, we will move to extra opening remarks on pool financing mechanisms. And to that, let me start with the Vice President of FMDV, Ntate Makubo. Let's give him a hand.
Let me start by greeting His Worship the Mayor of Johannesburg, who's also the chairperson of South African Cities Network, the chairperson of the SALGA in the province, chairperson of something else again. Greetings to the MEC, and thanks for gracing the occasion, MEC Chrissy. The mayors who are present, I see the Mayor Mfuleni, Mayor of the West Rand, you are welcome to this workshop. All other mayors that I can't see because you know these classes have got limited sight as well. Fellow MMCs of finance, I see the MMC from Randfontein, the great city the great town in the west, Mfuleni and all other MMCs that are present, both finance and economic development. City Manager of the City of Johannesburg, Mr. Trevor Fowler. Financiers, I see colleagues from the World Bank, IFC, Evanson Deutsch, namesake from the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, senior managers in the city, colleagues, you are most welcome. I must say that the team of Johannesburg, together with Global Fund for Cities Development, FMDV, we are pleased to offer you the space to come and participate, come and deliberate, and discuss on innovative funding mechanisms for South African cities. We did decide to theme it as South African cities, even though we thought the focus should be on Gauteng cities, but we did invite cities like eThekwini and Nelson Mandela, and I'm told they are present and they are welcome in this great city called Johannesburg, the city of gold. Welcome. This is an open dialogue between the presenters and the participants. We do believe that everyone's got knowledge and we are experts in what we bring to this workshop. Let's contribute to the exchange between ourselves as local government, as cities networks, national authority, institution, banks, pension funds, rating agencies, development finance institutions. There are some financial engineers here and advisors. So we're sitting here with a variety of skills, with variety of expectations, and we think that, like the mayor of Johannesburg was saying, give us an idea, we'll leave here with a new idea, and how to take the pool financing and or agency forward. We believe that all of us have an important and specific role to play in a continuum of the financing chain for sustainable local development, meaning we have to be responsible, credit-worthy, efficient, reliable in investing in urban infrastructure for all. I think we're living in interesting times, in that there's more demand on our infrastructure, there is capacity to take up that demand. So what it means for us is that with limited resources that are available either from the fiscus, the limitations of our balance sheet, we are duty-bound to sit here and find innovative methods of ensuring that we respond to the needs of our people by financing infrastructure going forward. We have to push the envelope, we have to be creative, we have to explore more innovative and efficient mechanisms. And this means that we need to push for greater coordination, cooperation between ourselves, meaning that the cities, the towns, the district, the province, MEC, with all other relevant stakeholders around the table and say, how do we take infrastructure funding forward? Hence, ourselves as FMDV, together with the City of Johannesburg, we thought it's opportune to call this workshop early in January 2015, to ensure that we get onto a renewed effort and a joint reflection on how to diversify and extend financial resources at the local level where development opportunities emerge, where employment is created, where revenue is generated, and where innovation and betterment of living conditions occur. We are proud that the City of Johannesburg to be the Vice President of FMDV, and we believe that through that association, we will bring more innovation, we will bring new ideas, and of course, we'll bring access to international capital to all the cities, towns, and districts in this great province of Gauteng and all the cities of South Africa. The aim of this workshop is to explore how we can push further our reflection and make financing for cities a core topic for success in urban development. We are cognizant that this will require collaboration of all key stakeholders involved, such as policymakers, National Treasury, COCTA, SALGA, South African Cities Network, and all municipalities in the province. This is why you will find in the program that the program focuses on land-based financing, PPPs, public-private partnerships, etc., etc. At the same time, we are offering space for real dialogue between international development organizations, South African cities, in order to better engage together in both infrastructure programs, financial and technical capacity building. This constitutes an opportunity on both sides to better build, to comprehend the logic, processes, needs, and common interests. We hope this will bring us to adopt a common language to help bridge the divide that remains between the cities, especially in Gauteng. The agenda would be interesting enough already to set an interesting meeting, but we wanted to be more ambitious as always, to challenge ourselves and challenge you as stakeholders. Indeed, from what we've already witnessed from other countries, we also figured that pool financing mechanisms at the sub-national level were another strong option that should be discussed and shared. We are aware that this scheme, this pool financing scheme, is not well known or discussed at the sub-national level in the country, and that it can be implemented in various ways, allowing metropolitan municipalities, together with intermediary cities and secondary cities, to go together to financial markets in order to raise complementary and cheaper funding from existing funders. Ladies and gentlemen, you cannot be afraid to innovate. and explore new opportunities. I do believe that we must explore the pros and cons of whatever we'll be discussing here. We must ask ourselves that is it not time now that the opportunity is presented to explore new funding opportunities given our realities? I would take the opportunity now to thank all of you, international experts, local experts, for gracing this event to ensure that at least our South African cities, our towns, our districts get an opportunity to discuss, explore, and participate in future funding opportunities. As a concluding statement, this workshop is crucial in a broader way in that the regional and international agenda for cities in 2015 and 2016 will be very intense with several summits and high-level meetings. In 2015-16, we are supposed to set the new development agenda, what's called the post-2015 agenda, with new Millennium Development Goals, restructured as Sustainable Development Goals, will be discussed and adopted, meaning new obligations, new targets, new commitments, and consequently new means to mobilize and invest at the local level. We will also adopt the new urban agenda during the Habitat 3 conference in 2016. Once again, new narratives, new perspectives to adopt and integrate urban designs of our cities and interaction with the residents. There will be a climate change conference, COP21, in December 2015, Afri-Cities. And there will be a Financing for Development International Conference to be held in Addis Ababa in July 2015. All these processes, new partnerships, necessitate that we must ask new questions and answer the question, how will we raise additional funding? How will we mobilize new resources? And how will we come together to ensure that we get impact with our resources? All these events elsewhere in the world, in South Africa, require us to play a key role in ensuring that our cities are transformed. This is why we have to show and illustrate that here in Gauteng, in our country, and especially in our municipalities, we are taking the lead on innovation and financing processes that should inspire policymakers for the next decade and the next millennium. For those reasons, I wish this workshop will be more fruitful and will lead to new opportunities for South African municipalities to engage with innovative financial models that will ensure livable cities for the present and future generations. Remember, together united we stand, divided we fall. Thank you very much, and you are most welcome. We hope that we'll have fruitful discussions and enjoyable workshop. Thank you very much.
Hey, good morning, everybody. So I think everything was said to introduce the workshop, and I really thank Executive Mayor for that, MEC and MMC for your speech and for welcoming us today. As the Executive Mayor said, I won't make it in a formal way because it's a workshop, and I think it's opening some discussion about the subject that is going to gather us for 3 days, so I won't have the protocol list, and I'm sorry for that. So dear all, it's a great honor for us to be here with you for this workshop on innovating in financing in South African cities. I will be very short, but first of all, let me please introduce you, our organization, FMDV, which is the Global Fund for Cities Development, an international organization of cities created in 2010 in order to provide and to offer the financial solutions for cities. As an operational instrument, FMDV links the demand expressed by local authorities with the solutions that have been developed in other cities of the world or that have been offered by institutional or private partners. As a political organization, FMDV became also a privileged partner for international organizations to understand the trends and the context of local authorities in local finance. In that role, we are now integrating a high-level conference where our members, the cities, have the occasion to express their priorities and to illustrate their policies. And Johannesburg, as Vice President of FMDV, is very active and well represented during those events, and I want to thank you again for that. When we built the program of this workshop on exploring the opportunities to develop pool financing mechanism in South African cities with MMC Makubo and his team, the interest of other cities of the world and international stakeholders became very quickly very high. And discussing with our city members and with our institutional partners such as AFD, USAID, IFC, SICO, and SNTA from the World Bank, we saw the interest of exploring this subject in other countries as well. So in a very short time, we went from a first workshop in South Africa to a global program that is now going to be developed in 5 other countries, which are Mexico, Colombia, Turkey, and India. And so in that sense, Mr. Makubo, I can already tell you that the workshop is a success. Johannesburg and South Africa have already moved the line in that sense, and we are honored to start this program here with you today. But I'm fully aware also that what is gathering us today is South Africa context, and I'm happy to see that the interest showed by all the participants here. So before starting directly with the subject, I would like to thank again the City of Johannesburg for the preparation of the workshop and hosting us today. And I will now have the pleasure to introduce you Lars Anderson, which is an international expert on pool financing mechanism and member of FMDV Board of Directors, who is going to introduce you the principle of pool financing mechanisms. Thank you very much, and I call Lars to make a speech. Thanks.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's really nice to be here again to attend this workshop. But it's also nice to it was also nice to leave Sweden yesterday with very cold and snowy weather to come to this much more agreeable climate. I have a presentation that I hope will be up there. Yes. This morning I will go through some of the sort of characteristics of pool financing to actually set the context of what we will be speaking about in more detail today and tomorrow. Let me firstly look at the advantages of pooling together for different local authorities. Of course, as I said before, this gives an access to capital markets. It's a possibility for small and medium-sized local authorities to have an access to capital markets. And also the fact that it lowers margins on loans. This is the experience we've got in many of the other countries where you find pooled financing mechanisms. It certainly lowers processing costs for going to the bond markets, and it lowers the risk to both diversification, financial expertise that could be employed in such an agency that handles the pool financing. And importantly is also that it could give incentive to increase creditworthiness. I will come back to that later. And it is a potential centre for transfer of knowledge to local authorities that are participating in this. Pooled financing, what is that? The first step of pooled financing could probably be to work together with local authorities to coordinate their borrowing needs, to coordinate their plans for borrowing, for infrastructure investments, to exchange experiences and so on. This could be the first step to building a cooperation together. The second step is what is called a club deal. A club deal is where local authorities together issue a bond in the market where each local authorities has a responsibility for their own part of the bond. This is something that has been done in several countries before they actually created an agency for the pool financing. It was done in France, where they did 3 or 4 so-called club deals before they actually created the agency. It's a very good exercise to get experiences from the capital market, to get experiences of working together. But I would say that when you try this, you should go to the third step, that is actually create an agency, a special purpose vehicle, in between the local governments and the capital market that could handle these questions of bond issuance, to be often in the market, to be known in the market for several of these bond issuance. Where do we find these pool financing agencies? Well, in Europe, and especially in Northern Europe, up until lately, we've had only the Scandinavian countries and the Netherlands where we find these agencies. But recently, we've also got the new French agency that was created a bit over a year ago. We will talk more in detail about these agencies tomorrow. I should also mention some of other organizations around the world that are handling pooled financing in a sense for local authorities. We have the Canadian agencies, we have the US bond banks. The JFM is the Japanese finance organization that was state-owned up until 2008 and then became owned by the local authorities. There is an agency also in India, the Tamil Nadu agency, and in 2011 the New Zealand agency was created. And very recently a new agency was created in Australia in the state of Victoria. But as I said, we'll come back a bit more in detail for these existing agencies tomorrow, but only to say that I've been an advisor to the UK Local Government Association, and they have created their agency now, and created a company, Local Capital Finance Company, where about 50 local authorities have signed up to be stakeholders in this. Among those are the city of Birmingham, the largest local government in the UK. But to have some words about how local government pool financing mechanism could work, and firstly some of my own views on this. And these values, I think, are kept by most of the agencies that are existing at the moment. Firstly, an agency should have equality between the local authorities within the agency. They should all be treated equal. In some cases, you would have to have different margins, but these margins should all be logical and fair. The transparency is so important when it comes to local governments, pooling agencies. You have to have a total transparent agency where you have a free flow of information from the agency to the local authorities, from the local authorities to the agency, and to the capital market, and so on. And thirdly, it's also very important that local government that participate in pooled financing mechanism should feel that it's their project. This should be owned, the project should be owned by the local authorities themselves, and they should feel a responsibility for these types of projects. Because doing something like this, it means local responsibility. And that means that in my view, cities, local government should be the majority shareholders in an agency. They should supply capital, I think it's important that everyone show their commitment by supplying capital to an agency like this. It could also be discussed in the different forms of guarantees of other forms of security that could be provided for the agency. But the main message is that this is something that is done by and for the cities, and that means responsibility. The transparency will be increased in an agency for two main reasons. And the first one is that the agency has to supervise the local authorities' creditworthiness in order for this to function well. But also the fact that when you go to the capital market, you will have to supply information that will be publicly available. In creating a local government funding agency, I think it's really important to have a separation between the roles of politicians and professionals. As we will discuss tomorrow, the French agency, where I'm on the board of this agency, they have a mother company where you have politicians in the board, and they have a daughter company where you have professionals on the board. And I'm on that board of the daughter company. The reason for this is that there's different roles. And the role for the politicians is to decide the overall strategy, to decide which local authorities should be in this group and working together. But the professionals should handle all the financing business that is done in the agency in a way that they have the experience to do. The credit enhancement questions. It should, of course, be sufficiently capitalized, guarantees, liquidity line, but very, very important is that there must be a stringent supervision of the creditworthiness of the participating cities. Before, I will just briefly relate to this slide. It should be in a full informal process to participate. We wouldn't like to hear that a public process would mean that sort of this will be in the news, whether a local authority was accepted or not. It must be sort of an informal process from the beginning. In the case of the Swedish agency that I started in the 80s, there is a way of following up the local authorities. This is you can't probably read what's on this slide, but it's a supervision before they become members, and then they do a supervision of every one of the local authorities twice a year to see that they maintain their financial status. In the case where they would not maintain it, they will be told by the agency that they must improve this or that, and if that is not done, they run the risk of being kicked out of the agency. This is really important because you need to make sure to the capital market that the agency will keep a creditworthiness that is good and that will lead to a good credit rating as well. In the French agency, it's sort of a likely process where they do both a quantitative study and a qualitative study of the local governments. This is really key to work together, that we could see that the local authorities within this corporation have a sufficient creditworthiness. And it also gives incentive to improve creditworthiness. Because there is a constant discussion within the local authorities. Where should we put the floor of the creditworthiness? What is the sort of the minimum creditworthiness that should be accepted in a cooperation between these agencies? I think that the agencies are really a vehicle to reduce risks. Firstly, because of the ability for an agency to employ professionals of finance. They must, of course, implement prudent risk management, as we said, stringent supervision of the cities, information being sent in all directions about this, and then lastly, but very important, it gives a possibility to diversify the funding. Because if you're one individual city, even if you're a big one, it's not really impossible to diversify the funding that much than if you would pull together the needs of financing. An agency could work in different markets, could work with different counterparties in a sense that it would be impossible for a single city to do. This was, I think, one of the really big reasons why the Scandinavian, the European agencies went totally unharmed through the financial crisis recently. They had no problems of raising money because they had access to all major markets, capital markets in the world. So it's really important thing to have this type of diversification. An agency could also be a center for transfer of knowledge. This is the example from Kommuninvest, where they have local politicians on the board, as we said already. They have local officials on the finance committee and credit research committee. They do every year what is called membership consultations, where they go in about 20 meetings around the country to meet with local politicians to discuss the agency, discuss the development of the agency. They produce seminars and conferences, and they also do advisory services to local governments. This is really important as well, to discuss questions related to financing with local authorities that participate. Coming close to the end of my remarks, I just want to say that an agency has the possibility of being a virtuous, or creating a virtuous circle. An agency is depending, of course, on the creditworthiness of the local authorities. This creditworthiness determines the perception of the market, the rating agencies, and so on, and that will hopefully lead to cost-efficient financing, and it will, providing that the creditworthiness are sufficient. And in order to be sure that this is an ongoing situation, it has to be this annual scrutiny of the members. This is really important. So, as I said, tomorrow will be more in detail about these agencies, and also about the possibilities of setting out a sort of road towards local government funding agency in South Africa. So we'll come back to that. I just wanted to say that I've have written 3 papers on this subject of pooled financing, and if there would be anybody that wants a copy of this, please let me know, and I would send them to you. I have some copies here as well, but not sufficiently, I think. So, or you can always email me at this email address, and I'll send you the information that you would require. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Larsen, for introducing the topic of pool funding, which is definitely gaining momentum as an alternative source of funding for cities, for businesses. And thank you very much for all those who did the preliminary remarks. Ladies and gentlemen, it brings us to the end of the first session. We'll be breaking for tea for 15 minutes. Would I please ask that we meet at 11 o'clock back in this hall for round 1 of our discussions. The next session will definitely be interactive.